Alright, so things are starting to look pretty good. Let's move down and take a look at this loincloth, which should have a little more shading to it. So I'm going to grab this, it's just called Color Fill 1. The only reason I knew which layer it was because I was able to correspond the color. So let's change this. This will be Light Leather Diffuse. So now we know what that is. Let's select its layer mask by holding down Control and clicking on the layer mask. You can see the marching ants now around the colorization there. Let's create a new layer that will be actually outside of our diffuse colors. So we'll just stack that out here. And I'm going to call this, whoops, excuse me. So we'll wait for the computer to come back around real quick. And we'll name this Light Leather Shading 1. And we'll give this a layer mask of our selection, so that takes care of that for us. And I think the only other thing I want to do is do exactly what we were doing before. Set this to multiply, and we'll start off with a 40% opacity. Of course, we can adjust that later if we want more or less. And we need to be painting with 50% gray, which is still selected. So how big is my brush? That's pretty big. Let's make a smaller brush. And for starters, you know, that belt is going to be casting a shadow. That buckle's going to be casting a shadow. All of this is probably going to be kind of indented toward the body, so we can just color all that in. And then it'd be nice if we had some kind of wrinkles in it. So I'm imagining, you know, the legs are going to push it out away from the body, and then the crotch would actually push it out as well, so it would actually be coming outward. But there would be indentions here and here, and that's what I'm picturing in my head anyway. So if I erase all of this stuff, which, no, that's... Okay, I'm going to cheat. Marquee select. Wham! Delete. Goodbye. Okay, great. So let's outline that. We'll have a line coming down here that's going to be in shadow, and then a section here that's going to be in shadow. But then the legs are going to start pushing it back out on the outsides of that. So we'll darken this up. And we can kind of follow along with that down here at the bottom as well. And just kind of arbitrarily push some surfaces back like they're bending around kind of haphazardly. And I think I'm going to clean up, kind of sharpen some of these lines up a little bit with my eraser. Alright, and maybe darken some of that up. And take this edge and push it back a little bit. I'm just kind of making it up as I go. Just have fun with it, because here, I mean, you can kind of break it a little bit and it'll be alright. I'll pull back on some of what I've done down here, though. Start to pull some of that back out. Alright, and I think that's looking okay. Now, you could also take this shading, if you wanted to, and you could jagged it up a little bit to really make the surface look like it's fairly irregular. I'm not entirely sure I really want to do that, but I just wanted to test it and see what it looked like. No, I think for now we'll just stick with a smooth look. Just because that's kind of, you know, along the look that we've been following so far. Okay, so great. Let's grab some of the next sections. Like we got this little piece of furry cuff, and this we'll just keep really simple. I mean, the back side of it should be pretty dark as it gets away from the light. And that's really easy. And then if you want to just kind of go along the underside of certain protrusions and give them a little bit of shadowing just by clicking or dabbing your pencil, then there you go. So real fast and easy, no problems there. Maybe a little bit toward the top as the fur kind of curves in toward the foot, just a little bit. No problem. Okay, so great. Let's copy that off. And we'll rename this to Shading 2 instead of a copy layer. And we can, make sure that do I have something selected? Oh, wait, we didn't delete everything yet. Sorry, I got all confused. Control A, delete. There we go. I'm sorry, I lost my mind temporarily, but don't worry, I got a new one and it works a lot better. Alright, so same story, just a little bit less of it. Just darkening things up just a little. And up here to the loincloth, same thing. Scribble, scribble. Okay, and I think that's it there, so we'll dupe that off again. This will be shading 3, and we'll clear out everything inside of it. And all I'm going to do here is kind of darken up here at the top where it's working with the belt and the belt buckle. And we'll get the outside edges over here where it gets around to the back of the foot. And we can pretty much call that right there, I think. So that was quick and easy. I don't really think I'm going to add any highlights to that. We'll give it that kind of, soft leather look, like a chamois. Like it doesn't really have much shininess to it. It's just, it lightens up to the diffuse color. That kind of Lambert material look, if you will. So the next thing I want to do is add in the stick that he's going to be holding. And the problem here is that I'm running out of room on the page because I'd like this to be taller than him. And I have, of course, the option of taking everything and shrinking it down, but I don't want to lose any detail. You could. There's no reason why you couldn't. But just to keep things nice and easy for me, we're going to just change the canvas size. So let's go to our canvas size. We'll lock it down at the bottom, and we just want to make it taller. So let's say we push this to, I don't know, if we added 5 inches, push it up to a flat 40 inches. Then it gets a little bit taller. How high up does it go? It's maybe a little more. So you notice I'm no longer using a standard sheet of paper. We can always fit this image to a standard sheet of paper later on. And let me make sure I lock down the canvas at the bottom before I try that little stunt. So let's say, 42, great number. Alright, there we go. I think that's going to work. And the first thing I need to do is step down here to my background and hold down Control and Delete, because Control, Delete adds your background color, which in my case is white. And that just fills the rest of that in for me. I'm also going to tap the F key so that we can move around the whole canvas just a little more easily. And because I don't like seeing my background color and the outside border area the same color, I'm going to fill this in with a 25% gray. And if you didn't know you could do this, make that, okay, great. I guess it's 75%. I'm thinking in the opposite direction. So, anyways, you can grab your paint bucket tool and then hold down Shift and click out here, and you're actually filling in. Well, it's not really the document. It's the border area around the document. It has nothing to do with your image. It's just there for physical reference, which is really cool. Like if you're painting something or you've got a photo and you want to see what it's going to look like matted on a certain color or against a certain background, you can pick any color of the rainbow and then just hold down Shift and click out here and you can fill it in. Now that, of course, looks atrocious, but the technique does come in handy from time to time. So we'll fill that in, again, Shift click, and there we go. All right. So let's add in our little our stick that he's going to be using to hold himself up. Before I do that, though, let's take our light leather shader layers. Let's put these into a group. And, we already had leather shading, so let's change that to dark leather shading. And we'll make this one light leather shading. So everything's nice and organized. We can turn all that stuff on and off. And what I'm going to do is take all of these groups that we've got here, and I'm going to combine those into their own group, which I'm going to call hard shading. So it's groups within groups. So we can turn all of that on and off at a single click. And that's going to come in handy here very shortly for cleaning this up and adding more of an airbrush feel. But we'll get to that here in just a moment. Now what I want to do is create a new layer that I'm going to put, well, it doesn't matter where it goes right now. I'm going to call this the stick base or stick structure. It doesn't really matter what you call it, just something. And we're going to grab our line tool. And currently a weight of 2 pixels, maybe a little thin. Let's push that all the way up to 5. And I'm going to start right out here at the ground, and we'll just pull this up over our dude's head, like so. And it's just a line for us to designate where this stick is going to be placed. Now, generally, I'm working with a slightly higher resolution, so I'll end up moving my computer screen around a lot so we can see this whole thing. But Let's grab our move tool, or you can just hold down Control and do it that way, unless you're accidentally selecting the background, which is what I was doing. Let's position that, so we'll plant that in the background. That background just kind of got oddly positioned. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to replace the background layer with a solid color. And we'll set that to white. And I'm just going to throw away my original background layer. We'll change the color of this to background. And now it doesn't matter where it's placed. I can just go on into infinity. So, anywho, in fact, I could probably get away with deleting the layer mask, because I just want that to go off into the wild blue yonder. Now I can move this wherever I want to, and that'll be infinitely white on the background. I can never move it out of the way. Okay, back to the subject at hand. I think that's going to be pretty good for positioning. What I'm paying attention to is where the stick plants itself in the ground to make sure it looks like it's kind of on the same plane as our Goblin, or at least mostly. Could maybe nudge it over just a little bit. We might even get away with rotating it slightly. And again, just think of this as a guideline. Okay, and I think that works. Now, to create the stick, this will be really easy. I'm just going to create a new layer, and we'll call this stick shape. And this is just going to be some freehand stuff. I'm not really going to worry about how pretty it looks, because the stick can be a little bit gnarled. Let's grab some shade of brown, something that is not really exactly associated with any of the browns we've already used. In fact, dark would probably be good. And I'll just grab my paintbrush and make our brush a little bit bigger. Hello. There we go. I'll make that brush not so. That's actually a little bit too big. I'm going to be picky real quick. I'll say 15, I think will do. And I'm not even going to worry about scribbling over the hand for now. We're just going to create some sort of flowing shape. And you notice it's back there behind that outline layer, so you can see the outline of the Goblin over the top of it, which is kind of cool. But we'll fix that later. Don't worry about it looking all nice and straight, unless you want a nice straight stick, and then you can just use your line tool, and that's fine. I want something a little more organic. Maybe put just a little bit of softening on the brush. Yeah, that'll help. In fact, oh, that's a way too tiny eraser. I can't get anything done with that. Make a much bigger eraser. Even that needs to be bigger. There we go. I'm going to nuke what I got, and I'm going to build this with a softer brush, so I get a little bit of anti-aliasing at the edges. Alright. Take two. Okay. Again, notice I'm just drawing it right over the top of the hand. Okay, cool. And we'll have this kind of flare out at the bottom just a little bit. Clean up some of these thinner areas where it looks like the stick might break if you put any weight on it whatsoever. Of course, we don't know what kind of wood this is. It could be, mythical ironwood. I don't know. Okay, so now let's come up here to the top of the stick, and again, just paint it right over the top of the hand. Don't worry about it. And we'll give it a little bit of curvature, and maybe give it some sort of interesting shape up here at the top. Let's color all this in. Okay, and fill that in, which is great. Okay, groovy. Now, a couple of things. First off, we need to make sure that the outlines of our character don't really get in the way. So we're going to hide the stick base. We don't really need that anymore. We'll probably end up getting rid of it sooner or later, but we'll drag the stick shape over the outline layer. So now those outlines pretty much disappear. We're going to select our green color, I think would be the best one. Grab the layer mask for the green color, and make sure that's selected, and then with our stick shape selected, we're going to drop down a layer mask. We'll take that layer mask, and we'll hit Control-I to invert it. And then that makes the hand pop in on top of the arm. Now, if you had your stick hanging over this part of the arm, you might also notice that the stick disappears. And just as a quick example, I'll just draw like an extra part of the stick. Don't do that. As soon as we get Control back, which will be in just a second. There we go. So you'll notice, the stick goes back there behind the skin, which is no good. That's easy to fix. Just come over here to your layer mask, and now you're going to paint white instead of black, and just scribble right there in that area. So you're just erasing the layer mask. Again, that mask is just there to constrain this particular effect. So remember to step over to the mask and take care of that constraint. Think of a mask as a fence that limits where stuff happens. So if you need to knock the fence down so you can go through it, well, be ready to do that. Okay, so let's go back over to our actual layer, and I'll get my eraser out, and we'll fix that little nightmare I made over there. Alright, couple of things. Let's take our stick shape, we'll double-click it to bring up its layer styles, and let's put a stroke down. And we'll put the stroke on the center, and actually that probably won't work the way I really, really want it to. Yeah, I'm thinking. Bear with me just a moment. Of course, it's going to have to be a lot thinner than that. And of course, red isn't going to work. We want it to be black. Yeah, that might actually work out okay. I wouldn't mind it being a little more anti-aliased. So let me cancel that. Let me not do that. Let me hold down Control and we'll select this guy. And now let's go to Edit. Let's do a stroke this way. And at the center, and let's say 2 pixels. And click OK and hit Control D. And that actually looks a little bit better, but it's just using that brown, so that doesn't help us at all. So let's try one more time. Stroke. Make sure to change your color, even though you can't see the color change from here. And click OK. Hit Control D. Okay, cool. Now all I did is that put a little black line around our stick to make it look like we drew it and then colored it in, which of course we didn't do. But that's all right. Nobody needs to know that but us. Let's drop a new layer on top of our stick shape, and we'll hold down Control and select our stick shape. And then I'm going to hold down Control and Alt and click on the layer mask for our stick shape. Now what that's going to do, in this case you see it narrowed our selection down to just that, which is not what I wanted at all. So what is it, Control or Alt Shift? Yeah, there we go. Control Alt Shift. And then what that did is that chopped out the part of the selection that existed at the hand. And that's an intersection selection. If you hold down Control, you are... I can't remember exactly right off the top of my head. I always have to look at the little icon, and that tells me. If you hold down Shift, you're going to be adding to the selection. So it's Control and Shift will add, Control and Alt will subtract, Control Alt Shift will intersect. So wherever those the layer mask and your selection intersected, it chopped that out for us, which is great. So, with that, I can place a new layer mask on this new layer, and we can call this Stick Highlight. And we'll say 1, because we might add another layer of highlight to it. Let's hit I for our eyedropper, and we'll grab that color, and then I'll just push up to a lighter version of it, and we'll get our brush back out, and just paint some little arbitrary highlight. Just to add some depth. Don't even worry about it looking pretty. Your stick can be all kind of gnarled and funky looking if you want it to be. And probably take our brush size down to go any further here. I'm trying to keep it on the side of the stick where the light should be coming from. Aside from that, don't bog yourself down too much. Because in the end, the stick isn't really a main part of our design. Our character may not even be holding a stick when all is said and done. This is just used for a pose. You'll actually see in a lot of life drawing cases where the model will be posing with a broomstick or something. And that's pretty good. Let's maybe make another one of these. And that's fine. And you'll notice this time I'm not doing any multiply effects. I'm just actually physically painting this, because I don't really plan on changing the color of the stick at all. I don't think it's that important. That looked a little bit lousy. Just draw a couple of chunks of it coming down through here, like it's a little bit irregular. Alright, so let's just back out from that. And I mean, it looks like he's holding a stick, which is all we're really going for there. So, let's see, that takes care of that. What else? I need to do something with the eyes, because the eyes are still this flat yellow color, and they're one of the only things left that don't really have any depth to them whatsoever. So let's have a little bit of fun here. What I'd like to do is take the outermost edges of the eyes and make those a bit orange, as opposed to the actual yellow at the center of the eye. So what I'll do is make some changes to the eye diffuse, and I'm going to start off by putting this into its own group. And we're going to call this group eye diffuse. And the reason I'm doing that is to keep everything organized, because there's actually going to be several layers that make up the diffuse color for the eye. Now, for starters, let's grab... I'm going to hold on Control and click on the layer mask for the eyes, so that'll grab that little selection. And I'm going to create a brightness... No, let's do a hue saturation adjustment layer. And we'll just push the hue toward orange. And it doesn't really get much more saturated than that. Something right about there I think will work just fine. And we'll click OK. Now, with that, we can grab our eraser. Oh, that's a little bit much. I'll just put a little bit of an eraser right there in the center of each eye. And then I'm going to switch over to my blur tool, which I need to just take the strength on that and put it up to just as high as it'll go. I'll just blur the daylight out of that. And then we'll take this whole layer and we'll pull down its opacity a bit. So it's just adding a little bit of depth to the eye. Very, very subtle thing. Nothing that I want to be all that serious or hardcore. In fact, we might, just because I'm picky, I might expand it just a little bit. So let's go back over to our layer mask. Let's get our brush out. Oh, I'm sorry, it's an eraser. I know what I'm doing, really. I haven't forgotten. And we'll push that out a little bit there. I could probably shrink this down and have a little more control. And actually, it's probably okay on this eye because it is kind of further away from us. So let's grab our blur tool again. And again, we'll just blur the daylight out of that. So a little bit of depth added there, which is pretty cool, and that will take care of our eye diffuse. It is multiple colors. Now the cool thing about doing that is that even if we change the color of the eye, that offset will remain on some level. So it is still pushing that, in this case now to a lighter blue. If we go to purple, you see it's pushing to a darker purple. And if you wanted to make a change to that, you just go and double-click your hue saturation. So like, let's say we wanted this to be a cyan color, and you'll see if you look really close, it's pushing that out toward green. But we instead wanted a darker blue instead of cyan, or instead of an aquamarine. So we can just double-click on our hue saturation layer and then adjust the slider until we got a darker blue. So a really quick way to make adjustments. But let's cancel that out, and let's set that back over to orange. Now, with that, I think we're pretty much done with the diffuse colors. I'm going to take all of my stick layers, and let's put those into their own group, which for now we'll just give the appropriate name of stick, just a prop. We don't need the stick base anymore. We can throw that out. Let's create a new layer, let's say probably inside the hard shading group, and we're going to call this eye shading. And all I'm going to do is darken up some of the edges of the eyes just a little bit to kind of push the eyes out at us just a little bit more. Really subtle about this, though, because I want the eyes to appear fairly bright. So let's go back to our standard formula of a 50% gray. I'll jump down into diffuse colors real quick, and we'll grab the eyes themselves, that layer mask that we're using for the eyes. We'll apply a layer mask to our eye shading layer so that we can't accidentally step outside the bounds there. I'm going to make my brush very soft and make sure I'm painting over here on the actual layer. And we'll probably need to position this underneath our body diffuse. So its layer positioning is going to be really tricky if we're not careful. Or what I can probably get away with is selecting the layer mask for our green color by holding down Control and clicking on that layer mask, and then select the layer mask over here for eye shading, and we'll just fill this in with black by hitting Control Delete. Now, what did that just do? Well, that just constrained our mask a little bit so that I should no longer be able to paint. Okay, it didn't constrain anything yet. I gotta fix that. It'd probably be better if I had some sort of indicator that I got it right. So let's select body diffuse. Okay, so that's chopping that out. Let's pop over here, and if I... Gotcha. There we go. So there's just Control Delete to fill that part of the mask in. So now I've just chopped out what should be green, so I can't really do that anymore, which is great for me. All right, let's hit Control D. Let's go back out to the layer itself, and we'll erase that. And this layer is a little bit too opaque. We're going to pull that down to about 20%. And I'm just going to darken up the corner of the eye, maybe a little more than 20. Wait, try our tried and true 40. I'm going to really get this eye. Push that a little bit. So yeah, that should just really be kind of bringing those eyes out at you a little bit more. And now the only other thing I wanted to do with the eyes is make a highlight layer, which I'm not even going to worry about a layer mask because I want this to be really, really sharp highlights. We'll just grab the color white and get our brush out. I'll put a little white highlight at the corner of the pupil, and then we'll make another white highlight that kind of shows where the light's coming from, and then just leave it at that. We'll keep that really, really easy. So there we go. So I think with that, I've got everything shaded that I was looking for. We've got some sort of a stick prop that he's holding up, which is great. And I think that's going to wrap things up for this video. Now, in the next video, we're going to start pushing this toward the finalization stage where we maybe maybe go through some adjustments first. I'll show you how you can make a few adjustments, but really we've handled that all the way up to this point. Everything that we've created so far is very adjustable, so we're just about ready to start finishing this up and really putting some polish on it.